how do we integrate the wisdom of retreats in our life and our communities? Really wanted to invite Asha, who is a part of the Ananda community. And those of you who may know, I spent some weeks in 2008 at the Expanding Light Retreat Center. So I really have a great respect and appreciation for the Expanding Light Retreat Ministry of Ananda. I thought Asha would be a perfect person to share with us about the wisdom of retreats. So welcome, Asha. So glad you are joining us. And oh, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Let me do it. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I'm very happy to be with you all. It's just such a pleasure to see spiritual friends and spiritual family. Just you all taking care of each other, and Eric inviting me to be part of this. It really touches my heart very deeply. There's so much, there are so many different energies happening in the world right now. The world is going in so many just crazy directions that any place that there is a consistent outpouring of light, I think the amount of good that's being done by a consistent outpouring of light is much greater than I think we can see with our human eyes. I mean, the good news about everything that we're experiencing now is it's much too big for it to be man driven. It has to be driven by the divine. I mean, the whole world was turned upside down in a matter of weeks. And I don't think any national leader or medical person or anyone could just turn the whole world upside down unless there was a divine hand behind it. And it isn't always easy to really understand what the intention of things are. All of us in our lives, I know, I've certainly lived long enough to have been through many cycles that were exceedingly confusing at the time, and the meaning and the purpose of them only came to me much later. I mean, the great goal of having faith in God is to shorten the time between when you're wondering why God is doing this to me, until the point where you understand why God is doing this to me. Eventually we will, and it just depends how long it takes for us to do that. You know, everything that we experience happens to us on two levels, which is there's this huge chaotic and sometimes not so chaotic, but there's this huge external world that we're all living in. You know, you have your children and families and jobs and friends and just the progress of everything. And life is not simple now. We don't live on simple farms where we watch the sun come up and watch the sun go down. We're just in 100 ways. I don't have to enumerate it for you. We all live in the same world. I live in Silicon Valley, which definitely moves at an extraordinarily high pace of change and energy and intensity just pretty much all the time. It's a nice place to live. It's sort of pre-sorted because nobody can live here unless they can sort of keep up with a high energy level, which I happen to enjoy. But especially at these times, it's almost like it's in the air. It's like we're sort of all in a soup pot, and all the little bits and pieces of potato and carrot are smashing into us as we all sort of boil together here. So that's just obvious, and it's not easily comprehensible, and it's definitely beyond our control. We can put out the best energy we have. One of the prayers for the woman who was forced to quit her one job and is desperately seeking another. We can do our best, but we can't always control what happens. But then the other side of the experience is where most experience really happens, but we don't even think about it because it's so normal, which is how whatever is going on inside our heads. Because people can be in the same circumstance and have very, very different experiences inside their head. I have been a part of a spiritual ashram life for like 50 years, which is essentially all of my adult life. All I did prior to that was just get myself organized enough to get to the ashram. So I have to be fair, even though I live in Silicon Valley and been one of those responsible for a large community and a temple, and we have a school for children. We have a bookstore. I've done lots of big projects over the course of 30 years. But I've always done it within the context of a spiritual ashram. But one, I would call it more like a mission station because it's not. I did live in an isolated way, the way what Eric spoke about for 16 years. But for the last more than 30, I've lived quite differently. As I said, here in Silicon Valley, working with very people who are very involved in the world, trying to make a spiritual reality. But because of the unique context in which I've lived, the inner world has always been really more real to me than the external world. And if we stop and think about it for a minute, all we ever actually experience is what's going on inside our own heads. I mean, that's sometimes why we have so much confusion among people. You think that both of you were seeing or experiencing the same reality, or all 10 of you, but then when you parse it apart, you realize everyone was experiencing something different. So as we go through our lives on a daily basis, the question is, how much energy do we give to each side of that equation? Now, habitually, especially in the society we live in, which is addicted to hurry, which is the phrase that I heard for the retreat that's coming up, we're there's this like the river is running fast and the river is always pulling us into itself. And now with all of this access through electronic device to anything that's going on anywhere in the world at any time of the day or night, we can't just sort of go with the flow because the flow is constantly pulling us outside of ourselves. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about being even less active or doing less. I'm a very active person. I've done a great deal in my life and I will continue until my life is over, I believe. But I also pay very close attention to the rhythm that's going on inside of me. Because no matter how successful or unsuccessful I am on the outside, in the last analysis, if I'm nervous, I'm nervous. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm distracted, one of the biggest difficulties with our life at this time is that we miss a great deal of our life because we're so busy thinking about so many other things at the same time that we don't always actually even notice what's going on in front of us. And we're thinking about the past and we're worried about the future. And so, hours will go by or days will go by and we'll be doing things and we'll never really notice that we're doing them. Or while we're doing one thing, we have another cycle going on of noise or television or computer or something, so that we're always six places at the same time. And the result of that is pretty much exactly what the two cups are. And we keep pouring the energy out without bringing it back in. Now, it's not so easy to retrain ourselves because once momentum is going in a certain way, you have to really, as my teacher Swami Kriyananda used to put it, you have to really just put a rock in the river because the river's not going to slow down for us. But we put a rock in the river and we say, for this hour, for this day, for this 15 minutes, I'm going to put my mind on what's really important to me. And depending on who you are and how you can calm that down, maybe it's music, maybe it's the natural world, maybe it's just going outside and being close to a tree. I recently visited one of the giant redwoods in California, and I just, crawled into one of its little spaces, and we hung out together for about half an hour. And his rhythm was quite different than mine. And he managed to communicate a lot to me that I hadn't been thinking about lately, which is that he was standing there. Actually, I believe that tree was standing there before Christ was born. And he'd seen a lot more than I'd seen and wasn't quite as worried about the short picture as I was. But nothing, absolutely nothing in my world externally shifted. But when I was suddenly in contact with a different kind of inner reality, my relationship to everything that was happening began to shift. And so sometimes we think, oh, I can't spare the time to focus in on the presence of God in beauty, God in music, God in nature, God simply within my own breath, God within the Bible. Whatever, wherever it is, um, I was so touched to hear Eric reading about Jesus sleeping on the boat and calming the waters. As it happened this past January, I spent all of January in Israel, and I was helping, I led actually two different pilgrimage groups. And we floated on the Sea of Galilee and read that very Bible passage and looked out at that water. And just imagined Jesus walking on that water. Just imagined, it's more than imagined. We felt Jesus walking on that water. We felt him being woken up and calming that storm. Now, those experiences, of course, that was unique to be able to actually be there. But that's a living presence within us. And if we don't feel it, it's not because it's not living within us. It's because we haven't paid enough attention recently to what is our own potential. It's the best, absolutely the best investment we can make in ourselves. I mean, then everything else that we have to do in an external world, and even the way our own physical bodies work, they work better when the inner world is more open. A friend of mine was speaking to me. He's a singer, a very good singer, and also a cellist. And he's been going through some ups and downs in his heart. And his heart has recently been clearing out. And then because the temple that we have has nobody in it most of the time, he's gone in there and taken his cello in and it's a fairly large space. And he's able to play his cello in this room with marvelous acoustics and then sing into the room. And he spoke of when he was doing that, it was like there was an echo that was repeating the sounds that he was making. And the echo was the presence of God enjoying his singing with him. And he thought about his heart was like that church building filled with clutter. And if you go in and you sing and you play the cello in that room, all that clutter just muffles the sound. It just drinks it in. And there's no echo. But when it's cleared out, even for a short period of time, if you clear it out even for a short period of time, then the sound of your own voice is more audible to your own ears, our own inner voice, because there's a soul inside, divine self that's trying to get our attention. And when we speak with that voice, then the voice of God also echoes because we're on the right note. Sings harmony with it might be a better way to say it. That's what we're looking for. And so the biggest question I think to ask every day is, am I in tune with my own inner voice? And am I singing it sufficiently that I can hear the harmony of God when I do it? And if not, it's very important for us to find ways. And Eric was saying earlier, we each have our own way, but find a way to retune that. Just, it's completely within our power to do it. And when you have a spiritual family such as you have here, you can help each other to do it by coming together in whatever ways are available to you, praying to each other, communicating with each other. But in the end, it's our own deep desire to live that way. It's like that's the grace of God is trying to move that direction. So we either swim with the current of the divine or we swim against it. And it's exhausting to swim against it. And it's a great help to swim with it. And then that will carry us wherever else we need to go. If any of you have a question or a thought that you might like to share or something you want me to elucidate or comment on, perhaps we could take a few minutes to do that. Would that be appropriate now?
Yeah, sure. That's great. Yeah, so we can
unmute yourself.
Oh yes, can you hear me now?
Yes. No, I meant if you're going to speak, unmute yourself.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can take some time for questions and conversation with Asha. If people have a question now, we can do that, or if you want to have a little bit of silence and song to gather questions, we can do that
As
too.
you wish. As you wish, Eric.
Um, yeah. So why don't we just sing a little song to allow you to gather any questions you may have. This is just a very simple chant. I'll sing it a couple times as you gather any questions for our conversation. Teach me to be silent. Teach me to be still. Teach me, Lord, to hear your voice and to know your will. And to know your. Teach me to be silent. Teach me to be still. Teach me, Lord, to hear your voice and to know your will. And to know your. And to know your. So maybe I can start out with a question and then we'll open it up to others. I'm curious if maybe everything that you shared encompasses it already, but is there anything else that really inspired, when you as a community at Ananda were thinking, where to expend our energy? Uh, what what was the impetus or inspiration for let's build a retreat center? Where did that come from?
Ananda was started by Swami Kriyananda in 1968 because his guru, Paramahansa Yogananda from India, um, knew that communities in this age, which is so restless and busy, that people who are deeply sincere about spiritual life need each other, and community is the most. He wanted something that was more than just monks and nuns, that gave an opportunity for families and for couples and for single people who didn't want a monastic life. And Swami Kriyananda felt that if we only built for ourselves, we would never thrive. So from the very beginning, there was always both a retreat and a community. And the community has, especially at the beginning, was largely focused on the retreat, because joy shared is joy expanded. And it is the nature of joy to want to share itself. If you even just go to a restaurant and have a good meal, these days especially, you'll take a picture before you even eat it and send it out to all your friends. And it just makes it nicer for you if you can have it. And how much more profoundly is it a joy to pass along that which makes your own life so meaningful? And serving the world is, I mean, God comes to help us and we're his instruments. And so providing a place of refuge and renewal is also a profound and great service, and the opportunity. It's always been a parallel opportunity. And that to me was one of the reasons I was able, I mean, I felt comfortable moving out into what was really a very primitive, isolated place at that point, was because we were also serving the world. I wouldn't have been able to go if there hadn't been a retreat, because I had to know that whatever I got for myself, I could easily and happily give it away. I didn't want there to be any conflict between those two things. So in that sense, it served the people who's come, but it served those of us who've been serving certainly as much and probably more.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Asha. I want to open up to, if others have questions, feel free to either type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. If not, I'm happy to ask another question, but want to give space for others in case they have some questions too. As, oh, it's yeah, you gotta unmute yourself there.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Well done.
Oh, hi, Asha. Thank you so much for joining us. Your words are just very poetic and lovely. I'm wondering what type of spiritual disciplines your community uses every day to deepen their relationship with the holy.
We love music. We have lots and lots of music. Two of the songs that Eric were singing today originated from Ananda. And so music is a huge part of it. Chanting, which is simple, repetitious songs, and also choir and folk kind of music, all kinds of music. But the music is a way to attune us to go into silence. We do a lot of silent meditation, but carefully, not merely just closing your eyes and hoping for the best, because you just close your eyes and hope for the best. That's a little hard because there's a lot of noisy folk inside, at least inside my head. I'll put that. When Eric was talking about the first few days of a retreat, people sleep. I'm not very good at short retreats because, as the way I put it, it takes about 3 days for Asha to go away, and then I can sort of start enjoying myself. She keeps me too distracted for a while. But so if you just close your eyes, you'll just be doing what you were doing with your eyes open, but with your eyes closed. So we have quite a number of ancient meditation techniques because our lineage goes to India, but I don't want to say modernized, but because it's a timeless teaching, but articulated in such a way that they're simple and they make sense. Not elaborate rituals that require another culture. Breath, inner sounds, and the flow of energy through the chakras, through the inner centers, the esoteric centers, and through the spine. And working with those things, starting with as simple as watching the breath, with mantra, also adding mantra, which is just repetitious sound. All of those things together enables a person, if they want to really actually spend many hours in meditation and have it be productive. The fundamental practice of our community is twice a day meditation. And even though, an hour and a half total every day, a half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night or more is recommended, as Swami Kriyananda used to say, 5 minutes is 100% more than nothing. And that's really what, so and 5 minutes, any effort to still your mind and tune in brings a result way out of proportion to what you're actually doing. Because what we're doing when we do that is we're beginning to cooperate with a higher flow of energy. And it's like if you've got your foot on the gas, you can't stop the car immediately, but if you at least lift your foot off the gas, it will begin to slow it down. You don't even have to touch the brake. Just take your foot off the gas and it'll begin to slow down, and you can begin to think about whether you're going in the way that you want to go. And the music and the meditation work together, because when you're singing, usually it's hard to be doing something else with your mind. So music itself will kind of fill the space. And when you go from external preoccupation, but you have to concentrate on the singing, you can't just do it half-heartedly. But if you really sing, then there's a kind of a changing of gears, and then you can move over. And of course, prayer. We're very devotional in the way we approach life. Completely.
Would you say that you're aspiring to samadhi, union with the divine, or is that just something that you're occasionally fortunate enough to achieve?
No, it's a conscientious, specific practice with God realization, samadhi, with God realization as the goal. In fact, the accurate way to characterize the way we meditate is we meditate with God union as the goal. And the practices are specifically designed to cooperate with the esoteric inner realities as Swamiji would put it, if your guest is coming to the front door, you stand at the front door. And so we cooperate with the way the energy flows inwardly so that the door is open. It's divine grace that one experiences. And it's a devotional I-thou relationship, but one gets closer and closer to that experience. I'm very devoted to Christ. Be ye therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. That would be it's an inward realization of that, what I consider to be a commandment of Jesus, not merely a promise. So I feel that that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Just a follow-up question, and if others have questions, you can either type them in the chat or unmute yourself to ask. I'm curious if you would say, in terms of that sense of God realization as the goal, that in a sense we're already one with God. So it's
that's where the word realization is actually a very subtle word. As I said, this teaching originates from India, from a great master named Yogananda. We mentioned his name. He gave it an English word. And the English word he gave it, he didn't invent it. It was already in place, but he used it, which is self-realization. And self with a capital S means the divine within me. But to realize something, you've not created it, you've not acquired it, you've not actually earned it even particularly, you've just suddenly realized. I suddenly realize. And that's why realization it's a very subtle way to say it, because we're focused in another direction, we're distracted and we haven't noticed. But if we make a deliberate effort to become aware, then we'll realize something we didn't know before because we weren't paying attention. I sometimes describe the whole spiritual path as ever expanding awareness. Actually, all life, if you think of it, anything that you progress on in your life, it's because you have a greater awareness about it. If you're trying to sing, if you're trying to paint, if you're trying to write a book, which I've done, you have a greater awareness of how it's done, and then you can do it. So what we're doing spiritually is we're just expanding our awareness. Oh, I thought I was separate alone and there was no overarching divine force. And now I'm aware that there is. I've had an experience. Oh, I thought, the natural world was separate from the man-made world, but now I'm aware that they unite. And then we realize. And so the question is there any upward limit to what we can realize? Or can we realize all the way to infinity? The Master's promise we can realize all the way to infinity. I have no illusions about the distance still that I have to go. But even, I'm going to quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which says, even a little practice of this inward religion will save you from dire fears and colossal sufferings. That's actually how it's put. And that's been my experience from the start. Even a little bit. That's why Swami says 5 minutes is better than nothing. Even a little changes your perspective, and perspective is everything.
Thank you, Asha.
So,
Other questions people have? Time for maybe one or two more. Maybe I'll ask one more if
okay.
no hands or chats coming up, which I guess would be kind of getting to the heart of our topic today, which is what do you think makes retreats powerful? It's kind of a twofold question. What makes retreats powerful and transformative? And the second part of that is how can we or anybody really integrate the wisdom of retreats in just daily life? Because we can't always go on a retreat.
No. But we can always be silent. And we can always look inward. So, I'm answering it all at once. What makes a retreat powerful is the degree, well, of course, good company, good food, good accommodations, good leadership, good music. All those things are great. Why not? Beautiful sunsets. I mean, that, of course, helps a great deal. But what really makes it work is the deeply sincere desire on the part of each person to actually open ourselves to receive. As St. John says, as many as received him, gave he the power to become the sons of God. Perhaps that's a little bit too much to hope for in a weekend, but the phrase "as many as received him" is the operative part there. I feel, I think about it this way sometimes. If you want to think, the light of God is always shining. It's a perpetual sunshine. It's a perpetual lit lighthouse. The light of the lighthouse never goes out, but we walk in and out of it. And when we walk into it, we think it's just been turned on, but that's not the truth, is that we turned our back to it because the divine is unchanging. It's infinite and unchanging. The power of Christ is infinite and unchanging. So it's only a question of whether we receive it or not. So when we enter into a retreat, a meditation, 5 minutes of silence, with the deeply held, it can only, if you have faith, you have faith. If you have hope, hope is enough, or just a scientific interest to see if it can be true, to conduct the right experiment, to see if I still my mind and pray and cooperate, watch the breath, do whatever is needed to still myself, what will happen? And the more enthusiasm we bring to it, and the more uplifted expectation, the more powerful it'll be. Then you don't actually have to ask how you integrate it into everyday life, because it's inside of you. So wherever you are, you are. That's what I was saying. There's always two experiences. One is what's going on outside of you, and the other is how you're receiving it. So if you've got a little company inside, if Christ or whomever you love is with you all the time, then it's just like being with your lover all the while. If you're with someone that you deeply love, it changes the whole experience, doesn't it? And so if we can learn to love God and keep his company or her company, however we feel it, loneliness, distraction, all the things that we suffer from, even a little practice of this inward religion, it'll save you from a lot of that, because we realize that this world is very different than we think it is. And once we know that, once you know it even for 30 seconds, you can never fully forget it. It can become obscured by dust and dirt and neglect, but it'll never go away, ever. That's the great beauty of it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Asha.